Hi, everyone, Casey here, bringing you yet another episode of Massive Action Podcast where we interview entrepreneurs in the real estate space, of course, locally as well. So dive deep into their mind, the entrepreneur's mind, and see how they are able to achieve maxi action and then maxi success. All right, so today we are very excited to be able to introduce one of the long-time real estate salesperson here in Singapore, Tyson. So without further ado, maybe I pass the mic on over to him to properly introduce yourself. All right, Tyson, please.
Yep. Thank you, Casey, for the invitation. I have been in the real estate industry for almost 15 years. Yeah, I started myself as my first career is as a fitness trainer, and gradually I moved up the corporate ladder to a fitness director in charge of 6 mega gym. Previously, it's known as Planet Fitness, and a team of 100 over trainers. So as gradually when I come, I worked so hard that I do not find time to plan my future. So that's where I go into entrepreneurship and real estate. So in 2008, I lost everything, my saving, my mom, and that is on the Lehman Brothers crisis. I started to jump into real estate. It's a big risk. I do not know where I headed to, but the first 2 years is a struggle. Ultimately, I managed to find a way to the success. So in 2011 onwards, I was one of the producers for a few years. I made quite a bit of money. And 2012 is the year that I stepped into entrepreneurship. And what actually interests me in entrepreneurship, because in 2011, there's a lot of, I serve a lot of China buyers. In fact, 80% of my sales come through China network.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
So very interesting to be in a niche that I think not many in Singapore are exposed to. Maybe tell the audience, what is the niche that you probably are at right now?
Okay, 90% of clients are overseas based. So in terms of my target audience, my niche is serving ultra high net worth, offshore investors, China, Indonesia, Malaysia. Now in the real estate space, now I focus mainly on commercial realty investment. So over the years, I have helped my clients to build a portfolio of commercial realty. I think now easily you can value at 150 million USD. So constantly build on this portfolio. So I will see myself as a small REIT fund manager, managing portfolio, building up undervalued property.
All right, talking about commercial real estate, I think it's something that a lot of people in Singapore are not very familiar with, I would say.
Yes.
Right? Because the rules are different from residential. Of course, we are very familiar with residential, HDB, the condo, the landed, you see them everywhere. But when we go down to downtown, etc., when we look at commercial, it is an entirely different game. I think even the bank look at it in a different way. So maybe let the audience know, how then do people make money there, or how? And second question is, how then do normal Singaporean like me, right, are able to get our foot in and probably make some money there as well?
Okay, the opportunity and pitfall of commercial real estate is that, okay, when we talk about the downside, it's intransparent, not efficient. It's more of an art than science. When we talk about commercial space, two identical units side by side. Well, one is the usage can determine 50% of the value in terms of rental and the selling price. So actually to get into commercial realty segment, I have actually learned from a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of traps. There's a lot of I got scammed. I met hypocrites. It's a big lesson learned. So trust no one. Always do the due diligence. Before making offer, we have a black and white. Everything, the offer will be subject to contract of the terms and conditions.
But luckily, I guess your buyer have you to do all this due diligence that they didn't manage to go through like this kind of scam and hypocrisy. So I think that's one of the many pros of engaging a professional in this aspect. Your interests will be protected, right? You have someone on your court to actually help you and actually fight for you for your own interests, right? That's really interesting. Let's go a little bit more towards today's time. Everything is inflated right now in 2022 while we are shooting this episode. We have probably recovering from COVID-19. Residential properties are through the roof. I think 20 plus months of increment for the residential segment because I'm in there. How about in commercial?
Commercial property is at all-time high. The price has gone to a level that I'm trying to make sense of it. Well, the good is that I managed to build a portfolio for one of my clients during the COVID lockdown without viewing the property, and the property is vacant. We built a portfolio of value at more than 60 million. The value of it has increased at least 30 to 50%.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. So do you think that, right, with the all-time high in the residential property market, in the commercial property market, is there still opportunity now for, people that are looking to buy in if, let's say, they have the money?
Okay, I personally, I have 3 rules or 3 key elements when coming into real estate investment.
Okay, share with
Okay,
us,
rule
please.
number 1, do not time the market. I learned the lesson myself. 2008, when Lehman Brothers crisis came, everyone is saying that it's a LU, sell and buy back later. I didn't follow. Few of my friends sold and couldn't buy back. Second occasion is during the COVID. It will be so bad, livelihood, affected, life are affected. Sell and buy back later. Luckily, I did not. In fact, we bought. So first of all, do not time the market. Secondly, always invest based on cash flow. If it is not for cash flow, it's not an investment. There will be always opportunity irregardless of market condition. Okay, if you follow the golden rule of the cash flow.
What do you mean by cash flow? Maybe enlighten a little bit of the audience here.
My golden rule to assess whether a commercial property is worth or not. Okay, I do not look at the current rental. For example, if a commercial property can give you a 5% yield at the current moment, the selling price is already factored in. So we will look for vacant unit as a rule of engagement at that kind of purchase price. Okay, for every $1,000 PSF of purchase, if I'm confident and to fetch a $2 PSF of rental, we'll go for it. For example, let's say it's a $3,000 PSF on average. I will ask myself, can I fetch $6 PSF when the lease expires, when I actually find a tenant to fill up this vacant place?
So how do you come up with this rule of thumb, or it's just from experience, this $2 per square feet rental for every $1,000 per square feet of a price?
The second lesson I have learned, we've seen so many investment property that guarantee high yields. So one of the property that I come across, the initial asking price is 5 mil and it come with a rental of 15,000. That's quite an awesome return.
You agree?
But I work back the rental PSF is almost close to $14 PSF for retail space. I'm experienced with the knowledge of the rental. I know, okay, that area, if it's not an F&B, the most is $7 PSF. So eventually, we managed to secure the play at a $1 million discount. We'll make an offer at $4 million. Okay, it's $1 million different. The condition came back is that the property will be sold vacant without tenancy. So that tells us, know the renter. Do not buy investment property because of the current rental. The tenant may not continue or may not be sustainable.
So always buy fundamental, buy value, right? Buy cash flow so that you can sustain. Is the reason of buying cash flow because you can sustain, or what's the thinking behind buying cash flow properties?
For commercial realty, it's an investment property unless you're using for own stay. Why I come up with the rule of every $1,000 purchase price rented at $2, that work out to be 2 point something percent. Okay, that kind of a rental yield is above the cost of borrowing, cost of fund. Okay, and potentially it can go further up. So if we see transaction of very high PSF, 8,000 PSF, and the rental is only $10 PSF, then we can got to question ourselves: can we fetch $16? Is the rental at the area going to that kind of level or not? So that brings another case study which I secured for my client during the COVID. It's at District 11. All the good facing is a strata retail transacted at 8,500 PSF, and the rental is hardly more than $10, 7 or 8. So a lot of owners who bought the project holding in, and we come across one unit is one of the best facing is a corner unit. We get it at 4,000 over PSF, half price of what that property is being launched. And the rental, we are looking at almost $11 PSF, and the tenant is, we can see that the business is good, sustainable, and they have renewed a second term recently.
Wow, that's interesting. So cash flow is a big factor when we are talking about commercial, because I mean, I guess at the end of the day, mostly it's an investment property. You wouldn't be able to stay there like, for commercial property, right? So what's the last point for the 3 golden rule of investing?
Do not time the market. Okay, always invest the cash flow. So thirdly is that always do your own due diligence. If you do not know where to do your homework, get an advisor. Now the difference between salesperson and an advisor: salesperson is sales driven, and advisor is client focused and result driven. So therefore, an advisor will take the commission from the buyer side, and that differentiates salesperson and an advisor, because an advisor will take care of the key interests of the purchaser.
So really, I think the level of trust between the advisor and the client is really important. And I guess the only way to differentiate between someone that is out for their own interest and someone that is really, be it for your interest, is, from what you are saying, right, is that you must do the need analysis first and not product push, right? I think that's one very obvious way to do it. Okay, so thank you for sharing the 3 golden rule that we should stick by, which is 1, don't time the market, whether or not it's up and down. I'm guessing you are saying that, whether it's up market or down market, there's always a deal, right? I interpret it as that. Secondly, always buy cash flow. I guess that means that you are always able to carry on holding on to the property even through the tough time. That is cash flow property. And lastly, we're talking about always doing your due diligence. What sort of due diligence you are talking about?
Well, when we come into commercial real estate, the due diligence is very wide. Not only when we want to check whether this property is freehold or leasehold, the usage, can it be used for F&B? Can it be used for entertainment? The source of data to check is very wide. So you get to check from the SLA, URA, and a lot of the shop houses, because it was built 100 years ago, there's no proper record to it. Even the owner do not know the built-in, for example. We only know the land size. What is the GFA? This will be, investing in a commercial real estate is a combination of science and art. And I think it's more of an art. Knowing the facts and data and trusting the gut feel. Actually, successful business people and investors always tell you that they trust their gut feel. The gut feel actually comes from years of knowledge and experience to derive certain formula. So it's actually a data science, built in our heart. Yeah, that's called gut feel.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for sharing all this. Then I think I want to help the audience ask this question. At the start of the podcast, we said that everything is inflated: residential property, commercial property as well, right? Then where are the deals at? And how do you identify them? Right? Where do you think, Tyson, is the deals at right now in Singapore?
Well, I get this question very frequently. In fact, some medias are getting an interview. We talk about inflation, a looming recession. Where are the deals? Well, when we talk about inflation, in a nutshell, is too much of money chasing too little goods, meaning that the production capacity cannot match up with demand. So it's all about a game of money. So where the money is going to is very important. We follow the money, So when we talk about inflation, construction is the human labor construction has gone up tremendously. In fact, from my understanding, easily 30%. So if construction is up, then how the intrinsic value of the property remains, and as well as the rental, will go up. So smart money will go to real estate, especially when we come about commercial property. One is exempted from the ABSD. For a foreigner, is a big difference. We are talking about 30% of ABSD of difference, a higher rental. And the other factor, a lot of investors, even a lot of homeowners do not actually recognize is that the changes of the property tax earlier, on the residential property. For non-stay or own-stay property tax can go as high as 36% if it cross 100,000 of annual value, meaning that if the property can fetch 100,000 of annual rental, I mean that's an easy interpretation of annual value. Okay, the property tax can go up to 36%, meaning that if I buy a property that is about 5 million, and we assume that 5 million can fetch 2 to 3%, if 5 million property rent at about $30,000 worth of rental per year, then it doesn't make sense, right? So we assume this $5 million can fetch $100,000 annual value. So you probably rent about 8 to 9,000 a month. Imagine that you will be taxed at 36%. It's even higher than our income tax of 21%.
Yeah,
previously we used property tax to actually for tax exemption, for our revenue tax. But now the property tax of a certain amount of a category of a property is higher than the revenue tax. And the key thing is that whether you rent it or not, you leave it vacant or you rent it, you are still paying at 36%. But for commercial property, it's still at 10%. It makes a big difference in terms of cash flow when you factor in the property tax.
So when you're talking about smart money, I'm guessing you're talking about institutional money. So or about cash, where are they going for? And from your experience, your 15 years of experience, where are the smart money going now?
Well, I speak for my target audience are mostly, they are foreigners, investors, institution or not. One of the key assets to hedge against inflation for them is not gold. Okay. For them is they think that Singapore dollar is one of the best hedge against inflation because our Sing dollar appreciate against a bucket of currency. So I do not want to quote which country. So for them to actually invest into a Singapore property and the underlying asset is Sing dollar, okay, that is a very good hedge.
The exchange rate risk.
Yeah. And secondly, property investment over here is very stable. Now, the key thing that will affect to me, okay, the key thing when I invest in a property, putting demand supply aside, is the stability of the politics and policy. Without a good government, a policy, whether how good the location is still a fishing village. We can be, like Singapore, right? The overseas investors, okay, invest firstly because we have a very good underlying currency, stable government, and the policy is intact to keep the property market stable, non-volatile. At this point of time, with looming recession, stagflation, interest hike, okay, Singapore property offers a safe haven to them.
Of course, everybody's mind is that when you're talking about overseas investors, they have truckloads of money coming into Singapore. So that's foreign investor. But how about locals? If let's say, our audience out there, right, Singaporeans, entrepreneurs, I think they do well in their business or they want to dive, probably they have maxed out the number of residential property and probably they are considering, do I have to pay ABSD for the next one or commercial property? Right, with like this sort of beginner commercial investor, what would you suggest to wet their toes, to get a deal, to make some money?
Well, for a beginner looking to invest in commercial property, there's no textbook to it. That's why I'm trying to write a textbook. Okay.
Thank you. On behalf of the industry and the audience out there, thank you for doing that as well. Yeah, but seriously, how do people dive into commercial, right? Because that is really lucrative. And like you mentioned, right, everything is like throwing you into a deep end of the pool, right? So there's no guide, there's no even salesperson, even agents themselves. A lot of people don't know this scene well.
Because when you talk about commercial, it's really a wide spectrum. You have industrial, you have hotel, retail, offices, shop house, and shop house can be used as an office, hotel, and retail as well. So it's quite a wide spectrum to read. So the key thing is that when before a investor come into a commercial realty investment, cash flow is the key thing. When people question, is it a good investment to flip? I never believe in flipping of property. I believe in investing at a good cash flow. Okay, if the price appreciate, that you think that if you don't sell, it's a waste. Oh no, another case study I want to share. Last year, I think we are at the second phase of lockdown. F&B are suffering. We come across a shop house that has vacant for more than a year. There's no buyer, and this deal come on my table. It's about asking about 5.4 mil. I got my Indonesian buyer. We deal on the spot, okay, at 5.5. For them, they are still in Indonesia, And 1 year later, out of nowhere, offer coming in at 8 mil, 9 mil. Actually, it wasn't intent to be sell. To be sold. We actually tenanted in a very good tenant with a 6-year lease. It's a cash flow property, and it's very good potential. But the final offer came in at 10 million.
Close to double.
So
in 1 year.
In 1 year.
In 1 year.
So I question myself, at this price, this PSF, how long will the renter catch up? Because we are talking about a property at District 7, a non-CBD. I have a portfolio at CBD District 1, we talk about Amoy Street. The average rental is only at $7, meaning that the PSF is about 4,000, but over there it's transacted way higher. So out of CBD, okay, if the PSF has crossed 4,000, I question myself whether can I fetch $8 PSF on average. The question is very tough. Eventually I discussed with the investors is that to actually accumulate a rental of 4.5 million, which is the capital gain, it will take 10 years. So it's a good exit point to exit. Yeah. So that's one of the experience we go for. Initially, we didn't want to flip. We go for value, cash flow, and suddenly out of nowhere, it's a windfall of an offer came in. I didn't even market the place, It's a cold call to make an offer.
Wow, beautiful. I think your buyer definitely will be very happy. Then it's always about with the $4.5 million of profit. What's next?
Making money too fast. There's also a concern, but it's a good concern.
So then a question is, where is this client moving on to next? I'm guessing there's a lot of confidence now in commercial realty. Now that you made $4.5 million and just within a year. That's awesome ROI.
It's awesome, but it's getting more difficult to find good property or undervalued property. But when we talk about commercial realty investment, it's like finding a raw diamond that don't shine. It looks like a stone, okay, but it's a diamond. Pick up the stone, polish it into a diamond. That enhance the value. For example, vacant, rundown shop house actually looks haunted. So rundown, it's going to collapse. But looking at it, we have the confidence. We know that, okay, currently it's non-F&B, can be converted to F&B. By the way, if you convert a non-F&B to F&B, the rental will increase. We're talking about 30 to 50%. So in terms of the property value also enhance. Then secondly, it's so run down. We need an A&E. Can we increase the existing GFA? Existing, let's say, the built-in is 2,000, but when we rebuild, can we maximize to 3,000? We study this case, and this is a real case. We acquire such property just before COVID. It's meant for reconstruction. We had architect submit plans, But COVID came. We couldn't get anything done. But you know what? Without getting anything done, we make change of use to the property. Okay, the client bought at 3 million. Okay, by doing nothing. 1 year later, because of the frustration, that they cannot do anything to the building, they still managed to exit at $3.8 million. So 800,000. Yeah.
Wow, super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing with all of us all this case study. And definitely, there is money to be made here in Singapore commercial realty. I think Tyson shared a few golden rules that he stick by and also used with his client, your client. Anything else to add regarding the commercial real estate front and to share with our audience?
When we talk about commercial realty, I can share one whole day.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah, even a full day seminar. That's why I started a commercial realty blog. Okay, that's commercialrealty.sg. We have property updates and property blogs on real estate. I'm coming out with my book on commercial realty investment. The book title is A System of Building Commercial Realty as a Portfolio. So it will be published in about 2 months' time.
We'll look forward to that, of course. Before you, if let's say you're listening out there on the car or in the train, all the links will be down below, right? If you are watching it on YouTube, right, the links will be down below. When in about 2 months' time, when Tyson's book is launched, we'll also send the link down in this current video, right? So thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I think there's still more to be dug out from you. But let's move on to the next stage of this podcast, because at the start you were sharing with us, the struggle of being an entrepreneur, right? I guess entrepreneur for a longer time that you have been a real estate salesperson, right? You've been in real estate for about 15 years. Maybe share with us a little bit of the background about yourself. Like previously you were saying that you used to be in the fitness industry, and what prompted you to change, and maybe just share with us, your life story. I would like to hear it.
Well, my life story is drastic or drama that our company make it into life story video of 6 minutes. Started as a fitness director. At that period of time, I worked 15 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah. I wanted to make my mom proud. I was brought up single-handed by her. So as a fitness director, I thought I made her proud. But I neglected the time with her because every time I step off the home, she's still sleeping. When I came back, she's sound asleep. So the impact came when she's diagnosed with last stage of cancer in 2007. So it's a devastating event for me. I realized that, pure passion and no time for family only bring regrets. So that is the time I left fitness industry. I wanted to spend time with her. And 2008, she passed away. And I lost my mom.
My condolences.
I lost my career. I thought I ventured into financial investing. So I took out one and a half year of wealth management, So I thought of being a full-time trader. So 2008 came, it wiped out all my funds, my saving, and I'm left with nothing. So at that period of time, can you imagine, if there's a Murphy's Law, that is a Murphy's year for me. I lose my mom, I lost of direction, fall into depression, almost bankrupt. My marriage is unstable at the point of time. So it's a big struggle uphill, But God sent me my first child during 2008, and I diverted my sorrows, depression, into real estate, and I started real estate as a career. And because I believe that real estate is always there, so when we come about financial or stocks investment, when people say that it's a stable investment, but back in my mind, I'm thinking that if Lehman Brothers can collapse,
anyone can collapse.
No, everyone can collapse. Right. Yeah. So only property will always remain there. If you are, unless the lease run out, if you are buying a 99-year lease. So I believe 100% in real estate. So I stepped into real estate. The 2 years of struggle, I made a niche in the market in China buyer during 2010, 2011.
How do you make? Because a lot of people are very interested to serve foreign investors.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
But how do you get into that realm?
Well, the same question was asked, by my bosses. They wanted me to share. How do I get my clients?
Yeah.
Is there a property guru in China? Okay, that strike business idea that there isn't. If there's a portal, in China, it's a China-facing listing international market of property, that would be interesting. So I went in that venture. I started tech prop venture targeting at China buyer in China, looking to invest in international property. So internet company really burns money. The first venture I went in, I did not have any structure, a lot of mistakes. So eventually I got to restart my second venture after 2 years. So in total, I spent 4 years of a business venture into that space, but it burns up all my funding, my saving, my investor seeding money, that I have left with no choice to drop the business and come back to real estate, to build my real estate, career, to have a stable cash flow for myself, for my family. So that 4 years of experience, what I did is that I traveled to China frequently. We work with institutions like the UOB China, Stanchart, the private banks in China. We do property talks, property investment related talks, events, golf events, education events, to reach out to the target audience and to promote the platform. So that's how I get to establish myself in the China network. And I learn about the culture of China market, because when I'm in Singapore, everyone is talking about the whole world is a market of its own. You talk about a market integration. When I'm in China, then I realized that the world, there's only two market, China and the rest of the world.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So because China itself is, let's say the audience don't know, they are their own market.
Yes.
I think they're big enough to sustain the market their own. And in fact, they actively try to cut out the rest of the world, right? So it's very difficult, like I mentioned, to go into that. And I think the 4 years of you stepping to try to do a prop tech company in China definitely helps a lot with all the networking of all the private bankers, etc. So I guess it's not the complete failure after all. It did help after, right, in your real estate career. I'm just interested, right? Fitness trainer, fitness director, transiting to real estate, transiting to prop tech startup. What are the few traits or characteristic or skills that you think it can be transited from one after another? What do you think like entrepreneur needs, right, to really thrive through all the tough times and the good times? Because I see that wherever you are, right, you're very strong in and successful in all these endeavors.
Because one can see that fitness trainer and property entrepreneurship is totally irrelevant. By the way, audience will look at me. Yeah, now I need a personal trainer to train me. Previously, I started as a fitness trainer. So as a fitness trainer or personal trainer, it's all about client focus, what the client need. Do assessment, whether it's weight loss, rehab, or strengthening. It's all about the personalize the service to the client's need and to deliver result. When I come into the management as a fitness director, because it's an American chain. So American culture always believe in KPI.
No fluff.
And on our forehead in the board meeting, one golden rule is that you are always as good as your last paycheck. So this kind of training, actually lead me to when I come to real estate. I will describe myself. When you talk about realtor or real estate sales, there are two types. One type of people, they are natural salespeople. They can sell ice to Eskimo. The other type, they are embarrassed or paiseh. I'm the type, that I wouldn't say that I'm a salesperson, but I handle my client with heart. They can feel my heart. I build trust. So eventually, I don't need a big pool of customers or a client, gradually, because, during my personal trainer period, I train high net worth business people, they are like top CEO. They don't have time. You want to get a 10 minutes time with them is difficult, but whether they like me or not, they engage me as trainers. I will see them 3 times a week, and 1 hour per session. And during that training, I learned very in-depth knowledge on businesses, investment. Some of them even share their real estate tips. I got these tips from this client and I share to the next client, and the next client went into that investment and made $500,000, within a few months. And I was thinking, hey, that's interesting. And I started real estate investment thereupon from myself. So there's actually, when I look back, connecting the dots is all linked, So when we come into an entrepreneurial kind of experience, entrepreneurship is an art of sales. Whether you're a top CEO, whether you are at the level of a billionaire status, it's all about sales. How do you influence the investors, the client, the target audience? So the art of sales that I have learned, the number one rule, to influence people is forget about selling. It may sound very contradicting, but it is, because when you don't connect the person, with an intention of pure selling, heart to heart, you want to deliver, you want to understand the person needs to deliver, the connection will be easily established.
So to sell is not to sell.
Yes.
From what I'm hearing from you is that selling is natural. It's actually not product pushing. It's really understanding the person's need and then to match it to what he needs, right? Which that's why a lot of people out there give a bad name to salesperson, because they are product pushing. In actual fact, I think sales in itself is a very noble career. That's why I'm in sales as well. To match a solution to a problem that people are facing. Okay, that's an interesting, another way or perspective to look at it. So from all your ventures, right, from being a fitness trainer all the way to being a real estate salesperson, then being an entrepreneur in the prop tech space, what have you learned that you can actually share with the audience? And then secondly, what is the characteristic trait that actually allow you to push forward all these years? Right, maybe we start with the first question. What did you learn across so many years, right, of being in the field?
As what I mentioned earlier, it's not how fast, how hard you hit, because we will be hit by rejections, failures, we will KO, we will always be knocked down, and there will be people out there trying to put you down, pull you down. So it is about how can you get up every time when you are down right there. So entrepreneurship is more of how resistant you are, how determined. Every time you fail, you pick up and you learn from the lesson. That is the key thing that I have learned. I mean, I've been through ups and downs. In fact, during the downs is that what drives me to pick up is my family. If I'm single, I probably will not have that kind of drive. I look at my wife, I look at my children, and lying on the bed, sipping on my alcohol. What will happen to them if I continue to stay as a failure? I don't pick up myself. That is actually the driving force. So again, the key factor I would say that, to drive or success is not about myself. There's always a driving factor outside me, and that is the key energy that always energizes me whenever I hit upon failure, come across rejection and pitfalls.
So throughout your many years of entrepreneurship, I would say, even a salesperson, the entrepreneur itself, what is probably a one takeaway that you would like to share with, for example, if let's say you were to be able to rewind the clock back to 20 plus 30 years old yourself, right? 20 years old. What's the one advice you would give young Tyson?
I grown up from a childhood of low self-esteem because I didn't have a father. I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexic. I couldn't remember A to Z until primary 3. So growing up, this kind of I have a very low self-esteem, So if I going to wind back, I will tell myself, Tyson, you are capable of doing something great. You may come across failure, you may be depressed, but you always pick yourself up. You may not be academic well in the studies, but because of that, the dyslexic and the ADHD, you can think out of the box, okay? Coming with creative marketing strategy for clients. Yeah, so I would tell, if I'm going to wind back, okay, I won't change anything to my life. I mean, of course, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of struggle, but linking back the dot, without all this struggle, pain, depression, alcohol, it won't mold me into what I am today. There's a statistics on entrepreneurship. On average, okay, successful entrepreneur failed 3 times, okay, and the average age of a successful entrepreneur is above 38. So I failed twice. Well, I believe the third time I will make it. Well, I'm over the age of 38, so I believe that the next venture I will do well, and I have not give up to on aspiring to be an entrepreneur. In fact, I'm planning for my next venture coming up.
Thank you so much for sharing all this. I think what we have heard from Tyson is that even when you fall down, it's common. It is usual, and you have to expect that. I think the mark of being an entrepreneur is that you are able to pick yourself up. You are able to motivate yourself. And of course, you have to know what drives you, which I think I'm hearing from you is your family, right? So thank you so much for coming to today's podcast. Anything else that you want to share with us before we end off this podcast, Tyson?
Well, thank you for inviting. The key thing, I think, to the audience is that I will end with a quote. The famous saying that is that anything that don't breaks you or kills you makes you stronger. Irregardless, this quote can be used in entrepreneurship, sales, handle the relationship. Yeah, that's my final quote to the audience.
Thank you so much, Tyson. We have learned a lot from you today, from your backstory to your 3 golden rule to sell is not to sell, right? Understanding your customer needs to really build relationship, and at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur, right? How to motivate yourself, how to pick yourself out. I think we have learned a lot today. I'm sure this will not be the first and the last time we are hearing from Tyson. Of course, he is coming out with his own book. He have Commercial Realty Blog, that all the link will be linked down below. And again, thank you so much for Tyson for taking time off of your busy schedule to be with us today, to value add to all the audience out there. I'm sure you have learned a lot. And lastly, to end it off, right, to achieve massive success, we always have to take massive action, which is the title of today's podcast. Thank you so much, Tyson. Right, that's it.
Thank you.